It's great. You're good. Oh,
Okay, I've started recording now.
There's Carl Goodwin.
Hello.
Hi, Carl.
Hi.
So
Carl is working on the fundraising part of this because we might develop an endowment fund or something to promote the activities in the academy behind curriculum change and behind just paying more attention and, if possible, making it the center of the attention of the academy.
yeah,
So yeah. Well, maybe I can very briefly remind you all that Lyn is my first cousin. She was chairman of the English department at Hotchkiss, and I think before that at Deerfield. So she knows independent schools extremely well, not only through her own experience, but also through her husband's, because they have both been teachers and been at independent schools most of their lives. And Skip Mattoon was the headmaster at Hotchkiss for, I think, at
11 years.
11 years. And so they all, and they both know Exeter very, very well, not only through their connections through other schools, but because Lyn's dad was the head of the trustees for many years at Exeter, Dudley Orr, my godfather, my uncle. So she knows Exeter very closely.
And I also taught in the summer school in 1964.
oh,
No, 63, yeah. So some of you might remember J. Don Jacobus, was he teaching? Was Don Jacobus teaching when you were there?
don't recognize the name, no.
I don't recognize that name either.
What about Chris Brookfield?
Yes, Chris Brookfield, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and then one more thing is that Lyn's daughter, if not daughters, I think it's only one daughter, right? It's only Danielle that went to Exeter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she knows it through as a parent also. And she's always been very interested in this topic as long as I've known her, and she's knowledgeable about everything. And she's always been a huge influence on my life as far back as when she and her husband were getting their PhDs at Yale. I was there as an undergraduate, so I had a lot of mentoring and care from them. So they're very close to me, and I'm really happy that she's connected with us.
Well, maybe let me give Lyn a little background, at least from my point of view, on it was in August of last year, I think, that I was talking with Conrad, and Conrad talked about his previous experience with Joe Simons that he just mentioned, and the fact that there had not been any response, from Exeter, and then we said, well, why, now more than ever, there's a lot more awareness, a lot more energy, a lot more need. It's a much more dire crisis. I think a lot more people, and so this group came together, and we thought that there are three main areas of dealing with an institution like Exeter dealing with the climate crisis, and one is its endowment and its investment and divestment policies, and another is the physical plant, their own carbon footprint, their energy sources, their waste procedures, etc., and then the other is their curriculum, because they're an educational institution, and we thought we would focus on the curriculum side of it and leave the divestment endowment to trustees and whomever, and leave the physical plant. And all these are important, and they're doing things on the physical plant, but leave that to the administrators who are and the faculty and who are on the ground right there. But we would focus on something that we thought was definable and achievable in a reasonable term, which would be to get a course on climate action leadership on the curriculum by the fall of this year, 2022. And we would take that as a goal and an objective. And we realized that to do that, it was ambitious. We thought it doable, but not easily doable. we would need a faculty champion, someone who's really behind this on the faculty and really wants to run with it with our support. And we'd need buy-in and support from the administration. So we spent about 2 months talking to one faculty member and one administrator. And after that, we realized we did not have a faculty champion, and we did not really have any particular support from the administration. And so that left us, actually happily, with the students who we have gone on to talk with and interact with, and have gotten a very, very positive, very encouraging response, very impressive response. And so we are continuing, this dialogue, this interaction with them now to give them our ideas and to hear their ideas and to work, as well together as we can. And so they have a number of ideas and projects and directions. They have a number of different groups related to climate, clubs on campus. And so some of them are starting to focus somewhat on curriculum and this idea. And so far, what they've come back with on curriculum is the idea to get the topic of climate change, climate disruption, climate crisis into every course in Exeter. And so that's a very interesting idea. I'm not sure it's completely doable, but you could get it into many, many courses and probably into at least one course in every department. And that would be a good thing to do because it could raise general awareness among the student body, which they say is quite low, which is quite interesting to hear from these students. They say there's just not much awareness across the student body, as we read, about youth in other parts of this country and around the world. So it would bring more awareness to them, bring more awareness to faculty members who say, this is not my department, what do I got to do with climate change? And so in that sense, it's an entry point for students and faculty into awareness and hopefully concern and hopefully action about climate. And so that's a good idea. What that's left with is still random, almost random, unconnected, in a sense chaotic, and unordered, unstructured approach to educating about climate change. And so we think one of the most important aspects of this is that it has many, many dimensions, from science to economics to the politics, the sociology, to communication, to disinformation, to organization, to really understanding man's relation to nature and whether we can, humans on this globe that can continue our lifestyle. There's an entire scope, and to really address effectively climate change needs an awareness of that entire scope and how all these topics interrelate, interact, and are tied together. And social justice is a big part of it. Racial justice, gender justice, these are all embedded in the climate crisis. And so, I think we still have the idea that a general course, a year-long course that covers this entire scope, obviously not in depth, but in a certain depth for the non-specialists, to introduce all these topics and their interrelationship is what's needed. And if we can't get that on the curriculum at Exeter as a formal course next year, which we certainly can't, the students can put together some kind of program like this that goes through the year of of classes taught by faculty members, taught by outside speakers, taught by students themselves who research various topics and give presentations. And in doing that, they learn more not only about climate, but about research, about studying, about teaching, about communicating, about working together, and get into strategic thinking and collaborative thinking. And so, it should be just a program, not a course for credit, but a program open to students of all levels, preps through seniors, open to faculty members, open to extra employees, open to grounds crew people who want to sit in and understand something about the solar panels they're installing. So there are many, many, many possibilities, and in a new, unstructured, not formal, a classroom for credit type course. Anyway, that's in a nutshell what we've been kicking around here.
Yeah, just to give a little background that I think Lynn would appreciate, I should say that our introduction to the students, which has been very fruitful, was through John's granddaughter, Leonore. I'm sure you know, she's an upper this year, and she knew the name of a student that another girl who's in her class who she knew was very active in climate. So just that name, and John, because we started, we wrote to her and got a response, and then we've had 2 Zooms with them, and they're very, very enterprising bunch of students. We've I guess we've had interaction with as many as 11 of them, or maybe 12 now, and they show a lot of initiative. So that's been where we've put our focus in the last since the new year. Well, actually, our first meeting with them was on December 1st. So we've had 2 meetings. So that's in the family still, in a way. Indirect.
It's also interesting. It's worthwhile adding, though, for Lynn, that we have had a Zoom call with the Principal Rawson, and John has had contact with him, conversations as well as emails, and we've just sent him a letter that he responded to too. So we have been in touch with him as well. But as Joe was saying, Joe Duane, he has, of course, other. He's got to run a school. He's got a lot of other things to be concerned with. But we have had contact with him as well.
And what seemed to be the 2 major challenges here in terms of getting ideas to be adopted by the faculty and to turn into curriculum changes. One is the interdisciplinary nature of the subject, when the faculty tends to be organized by departments.
Mhm.
That's one. And the other one is let's call it kind of sacred nature of curriculum for faculties.
Yep.
They consider it their territory. And Rawson is particularly sensitive to that because I think he has his own issues, being the only principal who has not been a faculty member himself. And the fact
He's a
that,
lawyer.
excuse me?
He's a
He's a
lawyer.
lawyer. He's a lawyer.
Yeah, he's a lawyer,
Environmental
right.
Yes. So I think there's a lot of sensitivity that either the administration or the trustees or the alumni, if they start putting their fingers into curriculum, that if it's not done appropriately, or if it's not done, it might really not work with the teachers. It create
so
that backfire.
There
So
is.
what has seemed to be a much more effective route has been to have it come from the students, because they're in the insiders and they're the ones, the ultimate beneficiaries.
There is in the Exeter course description it's not a department, but it among all the departments is this site for interdisciplinary, what do they call it? Integrative studies.
Mhm.
And so that is not actually a department. It is for just this, what it says, interdisciplinary courses or educational subjects that do not fall into one specific department and do call for input from various different disciplines. And so that's a landing point for an initial course like this. At least there is something in the structure. Yeah, John.
Yeah, but the problem with the courses that seem to have more of that is that they're elective courses right at the end of the student's career at Exeter. So
No,
we're
I'm just saying
not
there,
able to have them exposed early.
Right. Right.
I'm just
the way,
saying there
for
is
instance,
that, I'm just saying there is that slot
There's a
Yes,
possibility. Right. Right.
structure.
Yeah,
that-
when we've asked the students about those courses and about some of the readings that we identified that we thought were very good,
Yeah.
they didn't know about them. And their explanation was that many of those elective courses are never actually given because they don't find enough people to take them,
To sign up. Yeah.
or very few people take them. So they're not widely known.
Yeah, so I mean, our idea is if the students can get a program like what we're talking about, it's not a formal course, but it is a program, it's a structured program to, in an integrative, synthesized way, look at the entire scope of climate related issues and climate and the call and what's necessary to take action. If they can put that together in next year, that shows Exeter what an integrative course ought to look like, and gives them a basis to create a course like that to put into this slot the following year. So
Well, and I would just add to that if this course comes to fruition, it would be really cool to put it on the web and make it stream. And so it isn't just limited to the students or faculty or groundskeepers at Exeter. It becomes recorded and it's available to every independent school or high school or anybody in the planet. And so that would encourage learning about communication tools, storytelling, and really putting Exeter on the map.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more thing to that, and that is that you'll notice that we call this group Climate Action Leadership, and the leadership is an interesting concept. I think that we want to emphasize that it involves. We think that Exeter needs to be training its students, its graduates, for the leadership positions many of them will hold in various organizations, and to be effective leaders in whatever has to happen as they're going through their professional lives, to be effective leaders about the kind of changes that we need to make as a society. We also think that Exeter, we feel that Exeter is a very highly regarded institution and is seen as leaders in some ways, but we would like to do what we can to see how it can become recognized as a leader in education about climate disruption, and that's still a sort of an unknown. What's involved in that we're trying to figure out, but that's the issue of leadership I think is really important.
So adding to what Joe just said about videoing and Zooming, I think we have the idea that the various presentations, the classes in this course would be filmed and Zoomed and available for participation in person for students who were going to get into actual discussion in face-to-face in person. Others can tune in by Zoom from on campus, from wherever, and as you say, anybody can tune in. And so if there's any bright spots to all the disruption of the pandemic, is that the school and the students have been forced to deal with their educational pattern has been disrupted, and they have had to deal with non-traditional ways of learning and teaching. So there's more of an opening, there's more of an acceptance for non-standard modes of education and communication right now.
And one more thing that I think can be woven into the tapestry here, it's a little stretching, it's a little down the road, but the idea of climate action leadership is not one that only that we are encouraging, or we would encourage the students to limit to Exeter. We'd like to see it not, we'd like to see this become a template that every other independent school takes on, all recognizing that essentially the students that come out of these schools, which are essentially leadership incubators, and they all go to these high-end colleges and universities, which in effect is like a second stage of this transformation rocket. We want those Harvards and Yales and Stanfords and MITs and to do the same thing, so that this concept of leadership doesn't just stop when you graduate from an independent school, and it doesn't stop when you graduate with an undergraduate degree. It just keeps going, so that because these people are going to be the leaders. I mean, they're the more likely to be leaders in business and in professions and in politics and so on. And so the concept here is kickstart a really important transformation.
I think Lyn would like to speak.
Yes.
I would like to speak. Thinking about this, I mean, I started thinking about education. I started to think about the communication of, well, education in general. The world is changing really fast. I've been reading a book called The Exponential Age, about all the things that are coming at us very, very quickly that we're not prepared for. Our institutions are not prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
Educational institutions are the most stuck in the mud of all.
Mm-hmm.
The more prestigious the institution, the less likely it is to change, because it already has, it has no need to change. Exeter is financially stable. It has a great reputation. People are dying to go there. Why should it change? But unfortunately, it's a very old model and it's out of date. But nobody realizes that, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Right.
And that, so it's really, and I've been looking at college catalogs. They're also way out of date. It's the same old course model. You sign up for a course, you go to the teacher, there's a lecture, there are tests, there's papers. I mean, it's way out of date. So there are a number of, Dartmouth at one point, way back, used to have something called the Great Issues courses, that somebody had the idea that the students needed to know about some really significant issues, and that were going to affect their lives. And there are quite a few of them right now out in the air that every student alive in the United States is going to have to grapple with, not just Exeter. Today I listened to a Connecticut, it's called the Connecticut Environmental Summit. And I listened to it because I'm on a commission in my town, and it has to do with the environment. And there were a group of students that came on and talked about the fact that in none of their schools were they learning about climate change.
Mm-hmm.
We know what happened when, racism came on the curriculum, this huge hue and cry. You can't teach my child about race. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a real crisis that kids are growing up without knowing that their world is going to change really in many significant ways. They not only don't know how to address it, they don't know how to cope. I mean, they aren't prepared to cope. I happen to have a ex-advisee from Hotchkiss who was a teacher at Exeter, and he used to be the sustainability coordinator.
Who is that?
His name is Jason Braymiller.
Yeah, I know him well. Okay, yeah.
And so I talked to Jason last night about what the situation at Exeter right now. I mean, some of you have talked about in the last few minutes about the potential Exeter has. which is great. If Exeter really took this thing, and ran with it, it would be fantastic.
Mhm.
But it's not going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen. Because because of there's so many entrenched, people have really deep stakes in the ground.
Mhm.
And I think Rawson is not going to do anything that's really bold.
Mhm.
This is what Jason told me. Okay, 4 years ago, the Exeter had a strategic action plan. And environmental stewardship was identified as one of the strategic goals. And he chaired a committee for 3 years, during which he experienced considerable conflict with what he thought was required and what the institution was reluctant to do. When one of the things he thought that there should be a required course on climate change.
Mhm.
He thought nobody should graduate from Exeter without environmental literacy.
Mhm.
So none of those things got beyond first base.
Right.
Now, I think the trustees are meeting this winter, and they will be presented with a climate action plan.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of good things in it. They're going to electrify the campus. They're going to do carbon offsets. And there is an educational component, but it's fairly weak, according to Jason. So it seems to me you've got a kind of a political or it's diplomatic problem on your hands, right?
Right.
In my experience at Hotchkiss with an environmental group, and even Hotchkiss hired us somebody to sort of help maneuver, but this person was outside the faculty. It's very hard to get purchase within the structure of power. I mean, that's one thing Jason said. He had no power.
Mhm.
So it seems to me that the alumni would be your best bet to say, we insist that kids are not going to graduate from Exeter unless they know something about the major issues of the day. The most important change factors that they're going to have to cope with in the next 5, 10, 15 years. They need to know, and it's got to be more than a lecture. It's got to be more than a weekend conference. Although when I was at Deerfield, we had every year there was a topic that was addressed on a 3 or 4 day sort of special set aside time. The whole school was involved. 1 year was nuclear arms. 1 year was the environment. And when it was the environment, I was in charge of it. And I did a model Congress. Do any of you know what a model Congress is?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
So everyone on campus, all the faculty and all the kids were, assigned a role in the model Congress. And they had to write bills, and they had to get them through committee, and they had to get them on, into the legislative debate. And something like that could work if the school was willing to say, okay, every year we're going to do something like this. And then everybody has to go along, but I don't see your group of students, unless there's a hugely charismatic person in that group that can mobilize another 50 students to go to the principal and demand Otherwise, I think you're going to have to mobilize the alumni to say, we think this is absolutely necessary.
I thank you for saying that. I think
You
it's,
know, Lynn, it's interesting that you bring up racism, because Exeter now has a whole effort on diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yeah,
which has been going on for you know, a little while now. Maybe it should have been going on for 50 years, but at least it's going on now. And everyone is required to, I mean, they're
yes,
not courses the way I understand them, but every student is required to spend some time learning about you know, this area. So it's not like Exeter is incapable of, you know, mobilizing this kind of effort that's directed toward a specific topic.
yeah,
right.
yeah. Incidentally, I have a daughter who teaches at the National Cathedral School in Washington. And she said, everything is about race. All our speakers are race, but there's been no mention of climate change.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you know, I would just say, I mean, one of the issues that I thought a lot about is that is the fact that all of these schools, these institutions are, in a way, I think, complacent. They think that the future is like what they've been experiencing. They
Yes,
don't recognize that if they don't change and help the world to change, they won't have a future. I mean, you know, they depend on all this, the wealth that's generated. I mean, you know, if you really think this through, this is in their interest to understand that they're going to have to find a new way to be in service to the society, and but the ways they've been operating are no longer going to be viable.
Yeah,
that's
but
right.
they have an outlook of 10 or 20 years, you
I
know,
know.
at most,
And that's
which is their personal outlook. You know, they're
Yeah.
not going to be here in 2050, you
Yeah.
know, when the student body of Exeter today is going to be in their prime of life, and unable really to deal with, you know, any of the life work that they're being prepared to in traditional education at Exeter, because they're going to have to deal with the climate catastrophe day in and day out.
Mhm.
But you know, we're not going to be here there, and the administration and the faculty at Exeter, for the most part, not going to be around to deal with that.
That's right.
Right.
So that's a tough vision to impart to them, but somehow I think that needs to be part of our mission too. I mean, somebody has to be, you know, we have to keep that conversation, keep that topic alive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's, I don't know.
I think you have to be really a problem to the administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The trustees, I looked over the board. I used to know somebody who was in education on the board, but she's gone. I know only one person on the board. They're not educators, and they're
They're business people
business people.
for the most part. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so I see what we're doing. We're really in the business of consciousness raising, or consciousness, you know, changing, because that's where it has to start. And I think, you know, it's a tough road to hoe.
Is there any way you could send your document around to more Exeter alumni?
Through the Alumni Association, we probably could. I mean, through the class agent, every class has a class agent who controls the you know, the Exeter Bulletin. I'm sure you're aware of that. That glossy magazine is published 4 times a year. So, and there's there's some articles, and you know, we need to do some more research on how an idea for an article can be suggested and somehow scheduled, you know, and that happen. But I think, you know, certainly if we could enlist the participation of all the class agents to somehow, you know, and I mean, you know, the class agents have the ability to send out mass mailings by email to all members of their class. So if every class agent could include that would be one way that it could go.
But Lynn, you understand that this is a sales job, you know, comprehensively to whatever constituency we want to address, we have to do the sales job. So, I mean, even though, it would be possible certainly to get an article in the Exeter Bulletin magazine, that would have to go through the school. Anything that went out, to individual classes would have to go through the class officers of those classes, some of whom may be right on board with this issue, and some of whom may think, well, we have other things we're concerned about at the moment. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying that we can't just say, well, this is what we should do, and so we're going to do it. We have to get, buy-in by all the different constituencies.
I think your class agents are a good bet, and I bet that you'd find a lot of alumni would jump on board with this.
Yeah, I think my sense is that the people who would embrace this idea are, for the most part, different from the people who are now the primary contributors to the class donations, all of the effort that goes into generating money for that's the constituency which is probably not as eager to embrace this climate crisis as people who are not sitting there with big bucks that they're ready to give the action, but they would be inspired by, a lot of people would be inspired by this, I think. Anyway.
Yeah.
So who in our group can really focus on this now and take action to get through to class agents and alumni generally?
Well, I'm certainly willing to go out to the Exeter website and the alumni section and see how long it takes to suck up the names and email addresses and maybe other relevant contact information for the class officers for, say, let's just take 10 classes just to pick them, say 65, 75, 85, 95, and 2005 or something, whatever it is, and see how long that takes. And then, if we all did something like that, I don't think it would take half an hour, maybe an hour at the most, and we'd be able to get 50, 60 classes worth of this information fairly quickly.
I still haven't given up on the notion that we could inquire of someone like Jan Woodford or of the Alumni Association that might be willing to provide that information to us without having one of us.
Sure.
I don't think getting the information is the big issue here. I think we need to have a plan for what we want to do. Let's assume that we have the names and the email addresses of whoever we want in the alumni body. What are we going to say to them? What is our plan that we are presenting to them? We need to have something that is coherent, well thought out, relatively succinct. I mean, we have to have some kind of a plan. And also, in addition to the plan, whatever we want to do, this is just my comment on this. You can all disagree. But in addition to the plan of whatever we want to do with the alumni body, we need to figure out how we're going to let the school know. We don't want to just send out our communication to members of the alumni without letting the school know, because if we do that, we're going to have a big lot of resistance and pushback. So we need to figure out how we're going to, not to ask permission necessarily about what we're going to do with the administration, but we need to figure out how we're going to inform them. How are they going to find out about what we want to do? So that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
Lynn, what do you think?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Lynn,
Did you want to say something?
How do you think we should structure this?
I don't know. I think somehow to communicate that you've created a group that's very interested in promoting a climate, some sort of. I'm looking at your statement of purpose. I'm not sure you should say we're trying to create a course.
Right.
We'd like to see Exeter take the lead in ensuring that students have a good sense, that they're environmentally literate by the time they graduate and have a very deep understanding of the causes and consequences of climate change. We feel that Exeter, we just feel that Exeter take the lead on this. And we'd like your comments.
And I think maybe we go so with something like that. I mean, we could modify that statement of purpose and a little bit to include that. And I think it's my sense of how to start would be to make contact with the class agents who to sort of put a message out, and the message should for each class would be to see if there was a different member of the class perhaps who would want to become the champion in that class for that idea and work more within each class. I mean, there could be that that there's someone passionate about the climate issue who's not an officer and not an agent, but would jump at the opportunity to hook up with something that already has gotten started. So, because I mean, if we had one person in each class, that would be a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, if that one person would get have a small committee in the class, maybe they'd get 2 or 3 more, but that we would grow it that way.
Yeah, and when this document comes out, and it'll be coming, this document that Exeter is putting out about the results of the climate action plan, which has a lot to do with buildings and grounds, basically.
I think so, yeah.
You could respond to that. This group.
Yes.
And especially if you had a few more alumni, you could respond to that. You say, this is great, but we'd like to see a little bit more.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I would say, just given my perspective now of when this got started in 2014, or my first involvement was 2013 and 2014, we actually had a number of people. The primary difference between then and now is that more people have seen evidence of the climate crisis that is starting to assert it, just happen all around the world. So just people are more, and 5 years from now there'll be even more. So
yeah. But it's a terrible oversight in our whole educational system. I mean, the fact that, my grandchildren aren't talking about it. They don't get it in school.
Yeah.
They go to good schools.
Everybody, thank you for the link that you sent to that radio KALW discussion. If anyone hasn't had a chance, take the 50 minutes to listen to that. It's talking to a discussion among educators from kindergarten through primary through high school about climate education. So there is something going on in a lot of places. So a lot of places there are not. It's quite interesting. I welcome you, Lyn, to this conversation. I point out you are the first woman, to join our conversation. It's not trivial. The students that we're working with at Exeter are predominantly female.
Yes.
Women,
Oh, yes.
girls, whatever the word is.
only 2 males,
Yeah.
and 11.
And the co-heads, as they call themselves, are what we would call co-eds in college. The heads, the active ones, are all female. And in this, when you listen to the KALW, it's the moderator's a woman. The 3 participants are, the teachers are women. And they talk about, that gender equality, gender justice, actually, is one integrated issue in the climate crisis. We men may not be aware of that, but it is, and so that's another topic that is an eye opener, for us and for the students. It's something to look into. But anyway, there are programs and efforts to impart climate education going on across the and we've got other sites, that we've shared already, and you may have already seen, Lynn. But Exeter does not have a float in this parade. I mean, talking about Exeter becoming a leader. My God, Exeter's not even a follower. So.
Well, let me say,
I have one other thought that you, in connection, I don't know whether Exeter has any kind of, some of you mentioned a sort of a special event that takes place every year. Is there?
They have something they call the Climate Action Day. It's a one day a year. It's modeled, they for about 30 years now, they've had something they call Martin Luther King Day, so it's one day, opens with a keynote speaker, and then there's still about a couple of hours left in the morning. So they've invited people from the outside, so some alums of Exeter, and some who are just specialists in various fields. They give talks, they give presentations, they give discussions, and there are probably about 20 or 30 of those things offered in the morning, and then they have lunch, and then in the afternoon there's another block of time when another 20 or 30 sessions, and every student has to go to one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So
But those are all about race, right? Those are
all about race, but now Climate Action Day, it's all about climate. So they devote one day to that, and they've been doing that since 2015. And I would just say, that's something that I had a minor role in getting that started. The first climate action.
Perhaps you can lobby to make that more than one day.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that you could, as your group, you talked about raising some money. You could provide a couple of, first-rate speakers.
Right.
Actually, that's exactly what we're exploring that now with the student group, asking them what what their input is to Climate Day. It's coming up at the end of April. April 22nd is National Earth Day, and so it's scheduled for that time period. That's a Friday, but then there's a weekend following that. So we have a question into them as to what their input into that is, what programs they know about that, and the idea of having programs leading up to it, as well as following it.
Yeah. That would, just so you know, Lynn, that the Climate Action Day, that the first one was in 2015, and then they had every year they had one. So there were 5 before they had to go online. But those first 5 that were events held on the campus were all arranged and led by Jason Vermiller. He was in charge of putting that whole thing together. So you could find out more about it if you talk to him, want to reach out to him.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think it'd be important to comment, what we're describing as happening in the independent schools, because if you ask the principal how we're doing compared to the other 8 independent schools we compare ourselves with, or 7, I think is a group of kind of an elite group of 8, 7. He the first thing he'll tell you, we're way out ahead of everybody else.
How?
Have you seen Andover's? That's complete. It's ridiculous. It's so weak. It doesn't have any. It's just no. It doesn't have any substance at all. And then Choate, all they have is a big fancy center there for this guy. Gave him a lot of money. They made this nature center, but it's kind of not really working. So on. And now yesterday he confirmed something he had mentioned in the first conversation I had with him, that they were contemplating was joining this platform called Second Nature, which was started to compare and support and evaluate different universities in terms of what they are doing to address climate change and all these areas that Joe pointed out. It's a very interesting website, by the way. Second Nature is extremely interesting.
Mhm.
Not to speak of all the things that are going on at Yale right now. I mean, Yale has changed its whole fundraising model now
Yeah,
to take advantage of these social issues and mainly climate change. It's called Yale for Humanity.
yeah.
They see it as
Yale's
a
doing a lot.
huge opportunity because it is becoming such a hot issue in the financial world because there's so many investments you have to make for the transition, and the disasters are costing so much money that people at the top of the financial world, like Goldman Sachs, that's the first thing if you see Goldman Sachs name anywhere, right next to it, you'll see accelerate the transition. That's their identity almost. In these very recently, it has started to happen.
Jonathan, could you repeat the name of that group that's evaluating?
Second Nature,
And they're
secondnature.org.
going
Second,
around assessing secondary schools?
Well, secondary schools
colleges.
are happening after the universities. That's a new opening. And Rawson yesterday told me that Exeter had the possibility now, and that he was going to recommend that Exeter join it because he thought that it would be really important to get that support in front of the faculty and in front of the trustees, where we're not just talking, where we're constantly being evaluated and comparing what's happening. But what I'm understanding you're saying, Lyn, is that basically you have all these smart people that the independent schools hire. They're supposed to know, they're supposed to be at the top of their game. And they're supposed, not only in knowledge, but in commitment and everything. And they're just they have just a huge blind spot. They don't even see what seems to be obvious to everybody, including the financial world. These teachers are so comfortable in their own, their 20 years of, prestige and salary or whatever the incentives are, that they're not even doing the most basic things you need to prepare youth for what's going to be happening. It was going to be the most important events of their lives. So something is really wrong.
yeah.
I mean, the whole system just doesn't work. It's
It doesn't work,
a
but
failed system. I mean, I think something else must be happening somewhere else, and the whole system's going to fall apart because it's just not doing what the most basic thing educational system has to do.
They have a huge problem working with others
Mhm.
because a classroom is the greatest thing. You're complete control of this little,
Right.
this classroom.
Mhm.
Right.
And you're pretty convinced that what you're teaching is vital, right?
Right.
Okay.
Lynn, I have a quick
It's
question
the
for
same.
you.
It's just, there's so many professions that are like that. Doctors are like that. They have total control over their patients and so on.
It's human nature, the inertia,
Human
we
nature,
all
but
have it.
the professional schools, if you look at the medical schools now, the business schools, the law schools are spending a huge amount of their curriculum training people to know how to work in groups, to not be self-centered, to not be narcissistic, to be constantly thinking of what they call, you're working for the participant. You're working, your mission is the student. It's not you. It's not the teacher. I mean, I've gone through those things myself. I've seen them in live. And places, the ones that the one I know best is Harvard Business School, because Harvard Business School's big, let's call it guilt trip is, here we are, we're supposed to be preparing leaders that are making a difference in the world, and we're preparing, there are a whole bunch of them turn out to be crooks. We're totally failing here. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not doing anything. So this is a constant discussion, constant. How many of their graduates, all they care about is making money in the money game. It's just a game. They're kind of like they're kind of amoral actors. They don't care. All they're thinking about is putting money in their pockets.
And Harvard Business School also has a Center for Business Ethics that was very richly endowed. I mean, talk about the ultimate irony.
Yeah.
I know, but that's where Shoshana Zuboff, and that's why she became such an important person at the Harvard Business School. But here's this philosopher, psychologist who was telling them they were all wet, so they hired her. And she was a big change maker there. And I saw that up close, all of that. But I agree. I would agree with Joe and the two, all of you, that it works. An awful lot of it is not working. I would agree. I mean, just the description we've made today that all these people that I remember, I thought all my teachers at Exeter were gods. I thought they were gods. I thought really they were, I couldn't think of anybody more inspiring.
They were.
Now we're finding out, no, there's this self-comforted slipper, you know, they're going around in their slippers, controlling this little group, feeling good about themselves. And they're not doing the bare minimum of what you have to do. And they resist any change. I mean, it's pathetic. So I think we have to go to the core of what's going on. What's the whole model, it seems to me like it's a big failure.
Well, let me just quickly make a riff on that because I want to ask Lynn before we hang up because it's like almost an hour.
Right.
You're reading The Exponential Age. Can you say anything about that? Do you like it? Do you think is it relevant? And the reason I'm raising this is because everything that's been just talked about in the last 5-10 minutes talks about this intransigence of institutional inertia based upon the now clearly failed idea that we're in a linear world and pretty much yesterday was like today and tomorrow will be like today. I mean, in other words, the changes are
Incremental.
linear and modest. And when you talk about the exponential age, or this, the book,
Right.
which is something that we all know about, it's like, wait a minute, we got the hockey stick. We're now going straight up on just about every factor you could even measure.
Yeah.
And so that's completely out of sync with the educational environment that is trucking along on this linear concept that we still need to know Greek and Latin and that sort of thing.
Right.
So can you say something about that book?
Well, the book is very interesting because you're right. The argument is there's the pace of change is exponential and at about 15% a year rather than 1 or 0.5. And the future will not be like the past. And yet, that's the assumption upon which these schools and colleges, I might add, rest, that everything will go along. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us have children and grandchildren who are living in an age of particular abundance
Mhm.
and kind of self-complacency, right?
Right.
Yep.
And I think they have no idea the winds that are going to come at us.
That's right.
And that's why I think it's important that so many of these things are introduced as, you got to cope. You're not going to be a lawyer the way your dad was.
Yeah.
Law is going to change.
Of course.
And no president is going to be elected twice because there's going to be so much chaos that the politics is going to swing left and right. And that's going to be a huge challenge. We're not going to be able to cope with, I don't know.
We're not coping now.
Yeah, we're not coping now. No. So
You were
I
going
don't
to say
know.
something, Lynn.
But
You're
the
going to
book
say something.
I think the book is worth reading. It's Azim Azar, A-Z-A-R.
Okay, thanks. That's
Yeah, The Exponential Age.
Right. I have
And there's
it.
another book that's I think quite good. It's about AI by Stuart Russell. Stuart Russell really knows what he's talking about with artificial intelligence, and that's another scary thing. The fact that super intelligent machines will probably be invented soon, but the people who are doing it, human beings will do what they can do, right? You can't stop them from doing it, even though the consequences might be dire. And although, they're the ethics people who sort of rush in and say, hey, you got to think about how this is going to affect society, how it's going to, but we're going to do it because it's so interesting to see what we can do.
Right.
And there's money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Anyway, well, you got yourself a great thing to wrestle with here, and it's really important.
Yeah. We feel that's what we feel.
Really important.
Yep. I think there's something fundamentally wrong in the way those teachers are selected, hired, motivated, the whole, let's call it the human resource model, is something's wrong. It's not producing the results it's supposed to. It's,
But it's partly
I
leadership,
can't conceive of a person dedicating his life to being a teacher and knowing all the things you need to know and having the commitment and deciding to take that route and not being extremely sensitive and active in defending the things that we think are so important for the kids.
But John, the people who hire the teachers at a place like Exeter are hiring a certain type of person to be a teacher at Exeter. They're not
Right.
hiring people to throw bombs in the classroom,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
I mean, we're not talking about, you don't necessarily have, we're used to seeing it as you need to throw bombs because we see all this resistance. But that's not the way you solve problems, right? When you have problems of this type, like when you're going into a war, you've got to really put on get your act in order.
But we don't have practice dealing with this kind of a problem.
That's right.
Right.
Keep in mind that Ophelia, who was one of the students, told us, it was just a one sentence comment that just blew right by, but she said, most of the students at Exeter are wealthy and they are basically insulated from all of this stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
And she actually made the point that the wealthier, the less interested they are in climate change.
Right.
The only ones in climate change are the ones that are not so wealthy.
Right.
If you listen to that KALW, the one male voice was a caller towards the end of the program, calling from Palo Alto, California, and responding to the teachers who were teaching basically in poorer districts in LA and whatnot. And he said, here in Palo Alto, there's really no talk about climate change. There's no awareness of climate change.
That's right.
And it's exactly the same point, Aon. And so the Exeter student body is largely, in that sense, from Palo Alto,
Right. Yeah, Lynn, if you'd be interested, I could certainly send you the link to the recording we made of, I mean, both of our sessions with students were recorded, but the last one was a particularly rich session. If you'd like to, that was just a week ago or so. I could send you that, and it's a Zoom thing, and you can watch it and see what. And they're pretty impressive bunch.
Really impressive.
So hey, before we go, action items are to push forward on how we can connect with other alumni.
Yep.
And to focus, more on what Climate Day is going to be all about and how we can contribute to that. And continuing, how we can find outside speakers who can come and talk to the students at Exeter. And one thing I would ask, is there some way we can get in touch? I'd like to have some conversation with this guy, Jason. I don't know, what the, politics, and if there's some discreet way that somebody can get through and see if it's, not a problem for him, if, we can talk to him.
I have his email address. I could write to him and say that we're interested in talking. Would he like to communicate with us? That's, I mean, I've met with him several times over the 5 years that he was the
Well, it sounds like he has a very important perspective on the issue that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue of faculty-driven versus administration-driven school is a big issue going on at this moment, and not to say a struggle. I think that is a very, very, very deep issue going on at the academy right now.
But I understand also from Jason that I made the comment that, Exeter has the tradition of being a faculty-run school, and he said not anymore. So I don't know what that means.
We've heard, that's the second time we've heard that.
Yes, and I will add that it's when you talk to Rawson the way, we talked to him for 90 minutes for the first time, you could sense his just very frustrated with the faculty in terms of how slow, how resistant, how he just thought, curriculum change. And I think that fits what you were saying. Apparently his experience in trying to get this subject higher up on the priorities just met a big brick wall.
But there's got to be a dean that a dean for the curriculum. There's going to be somebody in charge of the curriculum, right? A dean of some sort.
I think
The
in
dean
each
of the faculty,
department,
I
I
think,
don't, is
dean of
there,
the
is
faculty.
there, is there a school-wide dean of that? I'm not sure.
Well,
Well,
dean of faculty, there's a dean of faculty.
there's a
Dean of
dean of
faculty.
faculty, there's a dean of faculty, and there's a dean well, basically, who's somebody who oversees the curriculum.
Mhm.
I wonder who that person is.
We could find out.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, you know of James Speth? You know who
Yes,
James?
yes, I know him. Gus
He's
Beth.
got a new book called They Knew.
I don't know about that, no.
It's about the, let me just read this one bit of, it's about the failure of government. The government's actions on the national energy system over the past several decades are, in my view, the greatest dereliction of civic responsibility in the history of the republic.
Mhm.
Right.
Great. What's the title of the book?
They knew, the government knew, you know.
Oh, they
all-
knew. Yes, yes, I've seen that. Right. Mhm.
So what is it? Can you spell the name of the author, Lynn?
He used to be in charge of the Yale School of
Forestry, I think.
yeah, SP.
Oh, SB.
No, 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 no.
Not SB.
Speth. Speth
Yeah.
is his last name.
SBETH.
And he goes by Gus, but is it say James on the title of the book?
He goes by Gus, yeah.
Yeah, he goes by Gus as his first name. Yeah, I've met him.
Yeah.
He's. And you could
Well-
say that about educational institutions, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I've been watching.
Dereliction of duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. If any of you, Yale has a whole website about climate change I've been watching the presentations. I've watched 4 of them by now. The one I remember most is the one by Dan Estey.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes,
Yes. And they are, let's say, more optimistic than I would expect. Maybe you would find them dereliction of duty, maybe, by presenting a more rosy path to solutions than you think possible. But that somehow they reflect, they either know what they're talking about, or they're completely, they're just one more example of this comfortable blind spot. It would be an interesting thing to figure out, because that dilemma keeps coming up. I mean, in the things I see and read, and I'm taking a course right now that's given by the University of Michigan. And it's complicated as can be, but the professor who's giving it finds all these just huge amount of things that have to get done. I mean, it just changes the whole world. Everything changes. But
What's the name of the course?
it's called Climate Change, something transition. The energy transition.
Send the links.
Climate change, the energy I sent it to Joe, I think. And I sent it, I think, also to Conrad.
I think you did. You just
The
send it
professor's
around.
name is Paul Sullivan. It's given
Paul
by
Sullivan.
Yale alumni.
Mhm.
And the participants in the course are they're all policy wonks. I mean, these guys have spent their whole life working on this stuff. They know this stuff in great detail, and they make comments, critical comments, and it's very interesting. It's much more detailed than I've ever than I was even not prepared for, but very interesting.
Please resend the link. I apologize if I've.
Yeah. It takes a lot of, it takes a lot, just watching this stuff takes a lot of time. I mean,
Yeah.
every Saturday I sit down and watch that lecture, and it's an hour lecture plus an hour of questions. I've seen 2 of the lectures. It's going to be a 10 lecture course.
Yeah, well, this is the point. Sometimes the problem is they know too much. They know too much about too little,
And also,
and they don't see the big picture.
Right.
I also recommend the Post Carbon Institute.
Yeah. You must know Richard Heinberg then.
Yeah, Richard Heinberg,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know him. I've talked to him about coming to Exeter years ago. So I mean, I hope that he'd be a wonderful speaker. And when I talked to him 5 years ago, he said, yeah, he'd love to do it. So
Yes.
Well, talk to him again, see if he can come, see if he comes
I'll
soon.
get in touch with him again. And by the way, the Post-Carbon Institute just published today another short new essay by him, which is relatively short, but it's a serious looking. And I posted it to the Cal group and also to the students. It's a very, very good evaluation of where the world and the U.S. is now in what they're in addressing what they needed to do, and also he talks about where we could be if we didn't have to be constrained by what's politically feasible. So he's a very realistic or good organization thing, and I think he's one of the best voices we have for talking about what's really important.
Guys, I'm going to have to step out. I really appreciate this conversation. Lyn, it was a pleasure hearing from you and learning from you. Maybe we'll do this again.
Yeah,
I hope so.
great to be in this group. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Well, I'm sure you guys are going to probably stay on. I'm just saying that I've got some other commitments that I have to deal with. So if there's, Conrad, maybe if there's some.
I will it'll be recorded until it ends. And so, you can, I will send the link around as soon as I can put it up.
Okay,
Jonathan?
thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Jonathan, I have to go too, because Skip has a Zoom that he has to.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks so much, Lyn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very
And
much.
big
Well, I
thanks for-
really enjoyed it. I wish we could just do everything that needs to be done.
Well, yeah, we
Wouldn't
do
that be
too.
nice? Wouldn't that be nice?
Let's
Bye.
do it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So long.
Bye.